T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. As always, I'm James Roy, and with me is Tom Chaparria. Tom, how are you doing today?
It's Wednesday. It's good. We've got some good Texans talk to discuss. A little sore from playing soccer a little earlier, but other than that, can't complain.
Man, you got some cardio going on today. Are you sure you're up to it?
I'm trying not to get old, and I hear if you stop, then you just erode, and I'm not trying to do that. My feet are going to kill me tomorrow, but I think I'll be all right tonight.
Water must remain stagnant to grow mold. So there you go.
Heard it here first.
Just trying to be deep there. I don't know how deep that is. It's just a fact. But anyways, one thing that's not stagnant is the Texans and all these moves and changes that they've made. Let's start just right off the cuff. The Texans traded Cam Robinson. So I hadn't really talked too much about that, but what are your immediate thoughts on that move?
I don't understand it. I really don't. I mean, say what you want about Cam Robinson, for the price or what he's done so far. I really feel like depth is like huge for an offensive line that has struggled, for an offensive line that has seen some injuries, for a position group that just tends to get injured in general. I really just worry, okay, if for some reason they need another guy, is that guy going to be better than Cam Robinson? And that's not to say that Cam Robinson is this world beater, but a proven veteran. Obviously they went out and spent, premium coin on him. So I get it from a standpoint of like, look, this is a chance to, get some draft capital back. This is a chance to go, okay, here's a guy we don't see long-term. Obviously he was going to be like maybe a one and done. This is probably the ceiling for him maybe. But if you're trying to win now, I think you need as many bullets as you can get. And I don't know. Now it remains to be seen if they go out and go acquire somebody. That could totally change my opinion. But as right now, if these are the guys they're going to war with, I'm a little concerned about depth.
Well, one thing to speak to the depth conversation is that Trent Brown should be healthy coming off the practice squad. I would suspect they might sign him to the active roster. They are putting in the interim, and even with Trent Brown, on the roster, they would be putting a lot of faith in Blake Fisher to be ready to play swing tackle, which they kind of already have because, the discussion goes Cam Robinson, really expensive for a swing tackle, but he was a healthy and active last game, probably because they intended to trade him, but he was not really acting in the swing tackle role anyways. So it's just a lot of money to have invested in depth, I think, is what it came down to. But a big part of the deal that's questionable to me is reading into Texans Cap's assessment of it. I believe a lot of the money still falls on the Texans for very few games, and I would have expected more of it to go towards the other team for it's not low compensation, right? That's like, I think, on the money. But if I was choosing between getting the draft picks or getting rid of the money, I'd probably rather get rid of the money and give them the draft pick. Reminiscent of the deal that Bill O'Brien did when he sent Brock Osweiler to the Browns.
I
And
don't
it, oh,
I
sorry,
don't
you got it.
believe that's how it works. Like Texans Cap has been adamant since jump, and I've agreed with him that no matter when they traded him, the Texans were always going to have to eat that money. So it never made sense from that aspect, and that's why I've always kind of pushed back when you're all like, "Oh, get rid of him, get that number off the books," and it was never going to be that way. That money was always going to hit their cap and just be dead regardless. So if you weren't going to gain a financial advantage, it didn't make sense to move him for the sake of moving him because you're not saving any money. Now, the draft compensation is what they were after, and that's why they made the move now. But if you're worried about the coin that they let go, that money was lit on fire the moment they signed him, regardless of what they did.
Yeah, true. And I mean, the other part of it too, like looking at it, the money doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of it that doesn't make sense. There's two things to me, right? The fact that Ursary emerged as left tackle, I thought always made Cam Robinson's days on the roster numbered, even if he was being used as a swing tackle. It's a lot of money to have invested in it. I would understand it if he was, but he wasn't even being used as that. And the other part of it is that Cam Robinson's obviously to some extent still viewed as a starting left tackle in this league. So to hold him in that position, even if you're actively using him as a swing tackle, is kind of against the way the Texans have functioned a lot of times under D'Amico and Nick. They kind of look to put players in the best position possible. You'll notice they might have been able to get more for Cam, but other situations that were looking for him may have been less certain. I'm wondering what the Chargers were offering in the offseason because apparently Cam Robinson was in those discussions before they ended up and eventually trading Austin Deckles over to the Chargers. But at the end of the day, they sent him to an organization where he's likely to start and be one of the better players on that team. It's just, I mean, it's the Browns, and so doing right by the player, I think, is a big part of it. But the discussion point about money brings up another big point, which I mean, we've already kind of talked about it a bit with the departure of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, but combining those two moves, that is several, I think in total, $16 million that the Texans have sank into getting a total of 4 weeks of play from two different players. At the end of the day, how impactful is that in your view of Nick Caserio's ability as a GM? Is it just, okay, big mistake, but he's done a lot? Like, what is that? How does that alter your view of this past offseason and how Nick Caserio conducted it?
So I don't necessarily look at this as a shot at Nick Caserio. I think in any industry, right? I'll speak for me as a space systems technician. If you've been doing anything long enough, you're going to have things fail. Like everything is not just going to be 100 over 100. You're going to have moves that don't work, processes that don't work, parts that are normally good fail. And you just go, okay, as long as you don't do that often, you're still making money in the end. Now, if this was a move where he went out and signed a guy to a 7-year contract for, $140 million, say it was something like that, say he signed Titus Howard to a contract extension or something crazy. I don't know. Pick the player. And that guy just absolutely stank. Those are the kind of moves that lose a GM a job. Absolutely. I think that the moves that he made were okay. Win now moves. He's very good with the prove it deals, that kind of thing. It was never going to be a long-term thing. The Diggs contract, I looked at the Diggs contract. That was a bigger chunk of money that they didn't get a return on investment on. But, hey, injuries happen. Nothing you can do about it. It was a home run swing. You thought, hey, let me get this guy another premium wide receiver. It just didn't work. I put these guys in that bucket. If they were long-term contracts, I would say, all right, time to start looking at Caserio going, hey, what are you doing, bro? But for me, you tell me another guy out there that you feel that would have walked in that they, I guess, cost so little in the form of trade that they could have got. And I'll be like, okay, maybe you should be GM.
Yeah, I mean, I feel you on that, and I like your comparison. I mean, I feel like most of us can relate to the fact, like, you go to your job every day, and at least in most jobs, in my current job, and really in any job that I've had in my life, most days are just pretty normal, and the goal is just to have as few bad days as possible. And when you start getting talked to about your bad days is when they happen too often. And so the real question is do you view what Nick Caserio has done so far as GM as too many bad days? And I think both of us agree that there's been one or two moves each offseason that's kind of like, or like, and the one overarching theme is the ability to build the interior offensive line over the course of several seasons, which is not shown to be something that has panned out yet. But I do think there's hope there. We can talk about that later. But overall, I don't think that losing out on that money is an indictment on Nick Caserio as a GM. I do think a lot of people will take that and load it into there's some people that have like a vendetta or like an agenda, if you will, when talking about, the Texans. They're looking for someone to scapegoat for the issues. And so when things are bad, you'll see everyone go, okay, well, Nick Caserio can't draft interior offensive linemen. Every offensive lineman pick he's made in the first 2 rounds sucks. And, he's lost out on all this money, took home run swing at Stephon Diggs, didn't make enough splash signings this past offseason, and all the signings and trades he made to get big players have since departed. And all those points thrown in together in one will make it seem a lot worse than it is. But I think overall, in the time that Nick Caserio has had as GM with the assets he had early, I think we can really only judge him based off the last 2 years. But I think even overall, it's been, I think, pretty solid. And if his one weakness is interior offensive line, I think, that's an unfortunate one to have, but I don't think it's an indictment on him as a GM. We got a comment from Brandon Halam, or a few comments, I should say. Damian Pierce getting traded to the Cardinals. I don't know, Tom. What are your thoughts? I think they're a team that could use him.
There's a lot of teams out there that need running back help. I really think, I think he's getting traded. I just don't know where. I read today about Bucky Irving having a foot issue. Now, the one thing that I would say is that with all these different spots that need running back help, I think he has a certain profile, and it's like, okay, he's not Bucky Irving. You know what I mean? I wonder, if he would end up at Arizona because they have a couple of pass catching running backs, and I don't know that he's that kind of guy. I don't necessarily know the fit for him. Dallas was the fit for him, and
well, he was a good fit.
And now they filled that role. So we'll see.
I'm not familiar with Arizona's run scheme, so I can't say. Generally, Damian Pierce likes a gap, kind of more hard nosed, run right at him kind of scheme, and I'm not sure that's what Arizona's doing.
To me, I see him as a New England Patriot. I just do. They don't need him, but I just do. It just feels right.
I can see the vision there for sure, but I also agree. Where they've got Trayvon Henderson, they've got Ramondre Stevenson. If Antoine Gibson goes down, or Antonio Gibson, which by the way, his exit from Washington was crazy. But then again, Washington's had quite a few running backs exit recently. Another one is, you think D'Amico gets Caserio to trade for Jeffrey Simmons? Jeffrey Simmons would be great. Are the Texans going to drop all that capital to get a position that is serviceable? I don't know. It would be unanimous home run, in my opinion, barring some excessive amount of money paid or some flaw in the system. Getting him onto the Texans roster for a few years after this year would be a huge move, but I don't know. How do you feel about it, Tom?
I was going to pull up his contract right now because I need to know, because he sounds incredibly expensive, and you have to pay CJ Stroud and you have to pay Will Anderson Jr. Where's all the money coming from? I too play NFL, Madden, but I still can't make that work. He's 4 years, $94 million in April 2023. So he's halfway through that. Maybe you could do it. AAV of 23.5. I know they don't have that. Texan Cap recently just put out a thing. I think they have $10 million in cap space. So
it would require some maneuvers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the cap space isn't real. I think Caserio could make that happen if he wanted to. It's just a matter of if he wants to. I don't know, and I've held this, and this kind of stems into the point with the interior offensive line. Obviously, Nick Caserio has not done an excellent job of building the interior offensive line, but I've said throughout the offseason, the blueprint for that it seems like he's trying to go for is the blueprint they've used to build the interior defensive line, which is here's some guys that you might know some of the names, but like we're not paying a lot of money for their services, and they're gonna produce at the level that we need them to. And so the only thing that kind of derails the train of thought of getting Jeff Simmons for me is like that's a big name and a huge investment to make it a position that, while some people will view it as a need, there are needs on the interior defensive line, and I think Simmons fills them to some extent. I don't think that the Texans necessarily view it as something they need to go out of their way and go through all that trouble to make happen. But looking at the interior offensive line, I mean, Ed Ingram has stepped up in a big way. What are your thoughts on that? And what are your thoughts on Juice at left guard? Do you think maybe the Texans are starting to put together what could be this, as I was talking about all offseason, serviceable offensive line that they need in order to produce this season?
Ed Ingram is everything that you could want if you're trying to, do a reclamation project from somewhere where it didn't work out or he wasn't very good, and you bring the guy in and he fits what you're trying to do. I think that's what you have to do in certain spots on your roster when you have a ton of high-end talent. Like, you can't pay for everybody, so you have to pick and choose your spots, right? Like, if I'm gonna pay a ton of money at both my D ends, all right, my interior defensive line has got to be not as expensive. So I don't see how you do that. If I'm going to pay my cornerbacks a ton of money, my safety's got to be cheap, that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I feel like they're trying to do a really good job of balancing it out. And in the trenches right now is where they're trying to be cost cutters. Now, I think that's not a bad move because you can't name me, the 5 highest paid interior offensive linemen. I can't do it. Maybe you can. I can't do it. It's a thankless job. Those guys aren't sexy names where nobody's going, man, the best right guard in football, and putting him on a Wheaties box or selling Pepsi or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, those guys are paid. There are guys that make tons of money and they're well respected in the league, but I don't know how many ads are doing.
Well, it's a deeper problem, right? Because like your options are 3, and really 2 of them are very good options if you can do them, but there's limited guarantee. Usually, the worst option monetarily is the one that's most likely to set you up. But even then, the premium on guards in the NFL is so high because they're so hard to come by. And so the Texans, a lot of fans wanted the Texans to go into this offseason and drop, $25 million APY and bring in a high-level guard. And then that leaves you with 1 guard spot to fix, and you hope that Patterson, or in this case Andrews, because early in the offseason it's Patterson, now it's Andrews, plays good enough at center, and you improve massively. But a lot of, Caserio was never going to be the GM that was going to be like, yeah, let's just throw a bunch of money at the interior offensive line. So then you're left with 2 other options, which is draft really well at those positions. So throughout the draft, not just Caserio has not done a very good job drafting in the first 2 rounds on the offensive line. It's been very hit or miss. The jury's still out on Ursary, but so far I think that things look good. Blake Fisher at worst is just an average swing tackle, which is not the worst thing, but Juice Scruggs has had a rough go of it. He's starting to turn it around. If Juice Scruggs turns it around, I think people are just looking at Kenyon Green as the narrative. But at this point, there are some question marks around the decisions that Caserio has made. But you hope that you can draft interior offensive linemen. And to his credit, Caserio later in the draft found Jarrett Patterson. That is probably, outside of Ursary so far, one of his better hits, value-wise. But ideally you do that. And if you don't, then you start looking at other teams that have tried to draft offensive linemen, and you start looking at guys that are getting towards the end of contracts that teams don't want to give their 5th year option, don't want to extend, or if they're later draft picks, they don't have the 5th year option. They're just getting towards the end of their time to prove themselves. And you go, well, that guy, when he was coming out of LSU, Ed Ingram fits what we're trying to do now. So we're going to see if we can get that out of him. And so far that's worked out really well. If Juice Scruggs hit, then Caserio has hit the both of the ideal methods to develop an interior offensive line. He has drafted one that has hit, and he has then went out and got one that has hit. But I think Brandon brings up a really good point, which is something we've talked about this offseason. Specifically with Ed Ingram, my talking point was, if Ed Ingram hits, he will likely command more money than the Texans want to give him. If he really continues to play at this level and other teams take note, the Texans aren't going to extend him. And honestly, you start getting into the territory of Shaq Mason, but Shaq Mason was more of like a build thing where his build finally got to him and he was paid a lot of money because he had shown good at guard, but kind of got exploited, for flaws in his builds, things that he couldn't control. But Ed Ingram is going to cost you a lot of money if he's good. And if he's not, then you've paid next to nothing to have him on the team in hopes that he might get better. So, and Laken Tomlinson's the new Shaq Mason. That would require Laken Tomlinson to have been at the level of good more recently. I mean, that's not to say Laken Tomlinson has had good years in the NFL, but none of those are in recent memory. So, I mean, and I really want Laken Thomas to work. I think that it made sense to go with him, but if Scruggs gives you something, you have to go with Scruggs. So anyway, the deeper point is that I think a lot of the issues around the Texans building the interior offensive line could very well go away if what we've seen so far from Juice and Ed Ingram holds. Because then now your only big questions are, will Blake Fisher ever take over starting tackle? And Jarrett Patterson's a 5th round pick who's playing backup center, which is ideal. That's like not even a bad position to be in. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on how Caserio's built the offensive line and how people talk about it so far?
I think it's one of those positions that nobody talks about until it's bad. Like, you know what I mean? When the Texans had good offensive line play, nobody cared. It's like that Jurassic Park.
That's a weird sentence because I don't recall it occurring very often.
Nobody cares. Like that's was the Texans offensive line when it was good. And 2 years ago it was serviceable. It was good. And I don't think we knew how good we had it when we had good offensive line play. Laken Tomlinson was a Band-Aid. I don't think he is the answer. I think it was like, look, we brought in a bunch of guys. We're going to see what happens, see what works. I want to pump the brakes on Juice Scruggs. A lot of people think Juice Scruggs for 5 minutes is the answer. And Juice Scruggs got beat plenty on Sunday too. So for everybody that's just like, Juice Scruggs, okay, but buyer beware. There's a reason he didn't play the first 3 games. I don't look at Juice Scruggs the same way I look at some of these rookies that didn't get playtime. We knew what Juice Scruggs was. I think everybody knew what Juice Scruggs was. He had potential, but he also got his butt kicked too. So I think that Cole Popovich said Laken gives us a better chance than Juice Scruggs. Now, could he take his job? Absolutely. I don't think that's a high bar that Laken Tomlinson has set. But I remember Juice Scruggs getting his butt whooped too last season. So I'm not ready to just go, oh, this is the one that was promised. I'm not doing that. So we'll see. I still think the answer to left guard is in the 2026 draft or 2027 draft, whatever.
I definitely think the Texans will look that way, but I mean, and it could very well be like either Ed Ingram's going to command too much and leave. Juice Scruggs could play well for a second and then not be the permanent solution. Like it could be both. The Texans could be looking to replace both next season. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if Juice Scruggs is in a contract year, so he could be back next year, but either way, I think that there's reason to believe that they'll go in there. But I also think that Scruggs developing this season would be a huge notch in, Cole Popovich's belt. We got the talk all offseason about how Cole Popovich is an O-line whiz. And so far, there's been something left to be desired. But I think a corner was turned in the Titans game. And I can't say this enough. Like, I understand the Titans are not a good team. They're one of the last teams in the league that has not won a game. To tout anything that's happened against the Titans is like guys that talk about preseason stats, except for the fact that the Titans are playing a regular season game and they are a real NFL team. And this is real things that have happened. Are the Texans going to get these same looks from every other team in the league? No, but it's about confidence. It's a very mental game. And I think there's some things the Texans can build on in this game. But one of the big things that's been pretty consistent throughout the season, which was the fact last season too, which is that the run blocking has looked at least serviceable and has improved throughout the season. And whether that's because we switched to Woody Marks in that last game and, you know, he found the holes, or if it was actually on the offensive lineman, who's to say? But they've looked a lot better, and that was something that Cole Popovich was in charge of before, that he has done well. And honestly, week in and week out, they every time. Week in and week out, we've been seeing the rankings for pass blocking, and the pass blocking rankings for the offensive line have been very average, like very 16th, 17th in the league, pretty much all season long. We can talk about the amount of pressures that CJ Stroud has faced. I think this is a point where we can safely say that some of it is at least CJ's fault in terms of the way he hangs onto the ball, but we're moving. The Texans are progressing in the right direction, and I think that the offensive line has a lot of hope. So I'm interested to see how it pans out. And speaking to it, right? So looking ahead, one of the things is like, oh well, it's not like the Texans are going to face a defense as bad as the Titans next week. I hate to break it to you, there are no defenses worse than the Ravens in terms of preventing the other team from scoring points on them. So and I mean, they're super injured. I don't like the Ravens are known historically as a really good defense, and so I get it, because like throughout my entire life, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, you know, Ed Reed, this defense has consistently had really great defensive play. And even recently, you know, they've had some really good talents on that team and managed to maintain one. But this season, at least statistically, and like just from what I've watched of the Ravens, like they have not played very good defense. And so I've been calling it, stoppable force meets movable object. That's been the term. And trust me, I know as well as anyone that we all took, science in high school. It's not like no one else thought of that, but that's been, and I see, and honestly, I typed up that tweet, and then before I sent it, I watched like 4 people put it in the replies to some of my tweets talking about this matchup. Like, it's not a very original thought, but it is the prevailing thought that this Texans offense will be, we're going to see if they can move a very movable object in the Ravens defense. Do you think that some people are too heavily discounting what the Texans offense did against the Titans this past week when talking about it? They're like, that doesn't matter. I need to see it against a real team. Because to be fair, I mean, like I said, they'll be going against a team that's allowed the most points in the NFL. So going from beating the Titans to scoring comparable points against the Ravens, I don't know. I mean, is it really that different?
I don't think so. I think the people that say those things are the people that aren't fans of the football in Houston anyway. Like the guys that are saying, "Oh, I need to see them do it again." They were never in on them to begin with. I literally, like, an hour, 2 hours ago, saw a clip on Twitter that Kendrick Perkins doesn't believe that CJ Stroud is the quarterback to lead the Texans to the promised land.
That's just another sport that Kendrick Perkins doesn't know ball in.
And I'm just like blown away. Like, what in 3 years has given you this instance? Like, what he's going to be when quarterbacks are like, they take so long to get to the finished product, and it's just blowing my mind. So at any point in time, you can get some talking head in front of you that'll say some stuff that just doesn't make any sense. And Kendrick Perkins, pride of Houston, so he does love his Houston, said that, and I couldn't disagree with him more.
Yeah, I didn't even bother watching the video. Like, to be honest, like Kendrick Perkins, basketball is his sport, and his takes on basketball are questionable. For him to reach across the aisle and try and give a take on football is not something I'm super interested in hearing. To be frank. And like, I know that, like, if I give a take on the Rockets or like on basketball in general, I'm prepared to accept that I'm not known to give basketball takes. So like, that's just kind of how it is. But I don't know, man. I'm looking at this matchup, and my optimism going into Baltimore is a lot higher than I anticipated it would be at this point in the season. Not to spoil, our preview, but for our preview of the Texans Ravens matchup, if you don't want to know, don't listen. But I mean, I took the Ravens to win, and this was assuming Lamar Jackson will play, which is apparently still on the table. What is up with the reporting on that? Like, so they reported early in the week. They said he will not play week 5, and then I think this is like an Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter like pissing contest or something. But then Rap Sheet comes out later in the week and is like, yeah, no, Lamar's going to try and play. And I'm just curious, like, how serious is that report? Is there a legitimate chance that Lamar could play? What do you think?
I don't. I think I really don't. Like dude's not going to practice all week and then play. Like, I mean, maybe, but that doesn't sound like normal standard ops. I think this is a lot of KG, head coach, media trying to, keep the points down in Vegas. Maybe I don't know. Like it reeks to me like dude has not practiced. Dude left game early. You saw him heavily wrapped up. Like what of all of that gives you any hope that he could play? Like if you're just reading between the lines, like this is not any team that's going to come in here. Like this is the Texans defense, which is one of the number one defenses in football. Like statistically points wise, it's the number one defense in football. Like Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter coming for you from either edge. Do you want to risk your prize quarterback who could be less than 100%? Like with an offensive line that apparently is bad enough that they needed to go sign Kenyon Green off the street for depth? What point says, yeah, let's run him out there? None of that.
I mean, I agree, but to a point, right? We've obviously seen these discussions had like with the Texans going to MetLife to play the Jets, where people say like, "Oh, CJ shouldn't even suit up. Like, we want to protect him," and it's like that's just, to me, that's not how it works. It would be an indictment on Lamar Jackson if they trumped up an injury to him in order to get him out of playing the Texans. Now, I don't think that's what you're saying, but like,
no.
If he is slightly injured, then I guess, yeah, hold him out. I wouldn't be an advocate of forcing him, but you also have to understand, like, the Ravens are in the same spot as the Texans. And I know you hate when I talk like this, but like the Ravens fan base at least, but I can imagine like John Harbaugh's name, who I think has a lot of, has built up enough stock to survive and withstand a lot of things. His name has been thrown around by a lot of people, more than just run-of-the-mill fans, as being on the hot seat and potentially the chopping block if they don't figure this out. I think a loss to Houston, it's historic for one, but it could be the start of tearing down the banner that is John Harbaugh as the Ravens head coach. I don't think that the Texans would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but a loss here, there has to be a sense of urgency in the Ravens organization, because one, teams that go 1-4 don't typically make the playoffs. It's just the odds go way down. And I know you hate when I talk like this, but like the Texans, the Ravens, either one of those teams is going to come out of this matchup 1-4 with significantly lower odds of making the playoffs. I think that at that point, you then set the bar for yourself. And I think John Harbaugh looks and goes, what do I have to do to salvage this season? What do I have to do to maintain my job? So a win against Houston, though, puts him at 2-3. And I think I don't think it removes any of the urgency, but it kind of fends off that rising tide. And I know that like the sentiment around this matchup has changed because of the injuries to the Ravens, but a loss to the Texans is still a loss to the Texans. And the Ravens have to feel that, considering they've never let it happen. Like, and considering that this Texans team has tanked its PR through the first 3 games of the season with how they've not been able to show up on offense. I mean, if this team, here's what I'll say. If the Texans march into Baltimore and CJ Stroud goes, 25 of 35 for like 350 yards and 4 touchdowns and just like cuts up the Ravens and it's not close, I don't think the Ravens ownership group looks at that and goes, oh, well, we were injured and maybe this just isn't our year, John. We'll come back and regroup. Like, this is a Ravens team that has, I put them in the same camp as the 49ers. The 49ers are in a very similar spot where they're teams that have had very consistent success but can't get it done when it matters. So I don't want to say that the Ravens are looking for an excuse to move on from John Harbaugh, but after all this time of getting close isn't close enough, and now you have a team that has finally fallen apart enough that they're literally not able to win games. You get to the point where you go, maybe it's time for a fresh start. And you've probably been thinking that for a while. When's the last time the Ravens won a Super Bowl? They won a Super Bowl in 2012 with Joe Flacco. It's been 13 years. And with Lamar Jackson, they've been pretty consistently good, but they've already had a season like this with Lamar Jackson. And then now they're back. You got to start getting to the point where you're like, is bringing in a new staff and blowing it all up and restarting better for what we have left of Lamar Jackson? So I sound like Chicken Little at this point. I feel like I'm screaming the sky is falling in the chat, and I don't like doing it, but that's the way I feel. I think the Ravens are in a very similar spot to the 49ers right now.
Couldn't disagree with you more. Like, they've lost so much. The same people that are saying that are the same people that think Joe Espada is about to get fired. Because why not?
Joe Espada's job safe?
I don't see why it wouldn't be.
No.
I
don't know. I haven't even thought about who's going to be the Astros manager next season.
You shouldn't have to. It's Joe Espada.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I haven't really given it a whole lot of thought.
No, but people are like, oh no, they're gonna cut him because they didn't make the playoffs and they've made it for the last 9 years, and it's stupid. They had 30 guys injured, like not just any guys, important guys. Now back to football, because this is a football podcast. I think John Harbaugh is 100% safe. John Harbaugh is not going anywhere. Like, and if they were dumb enough to fire him, John Harbaugh would be hired before he packed his crap. Like he wouldn't even have all this stuff out of his office and he'd have another job, because you're stupid if you're firing John Harbaugh. This is not an indictment on John Harbaugh. And all the other things. If anything, I think this is more an indictment on the general manager that just doesn't have enough pieces to work with. Like they lost Hamilton, Matabuke, and Roquan Smith, and that defense is atrocious. Now, those are big names. But I mean, if you take the similar guys on the Texans, you take them away, they're probably not going to be as good. The thing of it for me with Lamar, we were talking about Lamar. If you feel that you have to win this game and it costs you Lamar Jackson, if he truly is hurt, and I think he truly is hurt, and if it gets worse or you injure him further because you pushed an injury a la Jordan and
a la RG3,
and you lose him for the season or you lose him for an extended period of time because you didn't rest him now, then it doesn't matter if they win or lose this game. There's no plan for a team without RG3 without Lamar Jackson. Like they don't practice.
Whoa! Cooper Rush is a
get him, chat. Get him in the comments.
To be fair, people keep posting the Texans Cowboys game where the Texans won 34-10, and they keep like leaving that slither with the stat line. And Cooper Rush threw for the most hollow 350 yards and touchdown and interception that I've ever seen in my life in that game. But people will see that stat and be like, well, he tore us up. And I'm like, I mean, a lot of those yards came after the game was over, but he also didn't score a lot of points. And that was a product of the D'Amico's defense that season, which was give up a lot of yards, don't score a lot of points, So, anyways, I feel you. I mean, I like I said, I feel like Chicken Little saying it, but like I can't deny that in my head, the Ravens are heading closer to where the 49ers are than rebounding from this. And I agree with you. You don't put Lamar Jackson at risk, if he's injured to get this win. And I think ownership understands that. But if Lamar Jackson can go and decides not to play, like if he's good to go and decides not to play because it's Texans, I would be shocked, because there has to be some level of urgency in that organization. And that's to say, like, I think for the past 13 or 12, 10 to 12 years, John Harbaugh hasn't given it a thought of whether or not he will ever be doing anything else but coaching the Ravens. But I would say that after a loss this week, it might take one or two more. If I'm John Harbaugh, I start going, man, am I going to be in Baltimore for much longer? Like, it may not be this season. If it goes like this, and right, let's look at the Texans' history. Gary Kubiak has, and granted, it's a lot less that he's built up, but he had a lot of longer leash. He went through and for 2 or 3 seasons put together some of the greatest offensive performances, had the Bulls on parade with Wade Phillips coaching on the other side, and was a playoff team, was widely considered a Super Bowl contender for 2 years straight, and then comes out flat to start the next season and is fired before the season is over. John Harbaugh has a longer leash than that, but I think that if that means that I don't think he's going to be fired mid-season. But I think that if this season continues this way, that I think the conversation will be had. I'm not fully sure he'll be fired, but if the Ravens hobble into the offseason 4-13, like, it's tough to believe that they don't at least like call him into the office and have a chat. Like, be like, hey man, the start of this next season is very vital and will be the difference between whether or not you remain here. Like, I think he's earned that much. That's not something most coaches would get. If you are a team like I guess that's the comparison being made here, is that Gary Kubiak got fired after being pretty much where the Ravens are at right now. Obviously, it got a lot worse on offense than I think, but the Ravens have had pretty bad defense, I guess. But I think that John Harbaugh has like that stock built up to where, he could get through the whole season and have another shot. But
the fact that you just compared those two coaches together is blasphemy to me. Like,
they're both Super Bowl champion coaches.
They are not. No. The Gary Kubiak you're talking about that got fired was not a Super Bowl champion coach at that time.
But they are both Super Bowl champion
That is
coaches.
not the point here. He did that in another place. The comparison of the two guys is not even the same. What Kubiak put on paper as a Texan versus what Harbaugh put on paper as a Raven, like there's no way. There's no way. And to be honest, I think it would take like a 4-13 season, and then I would think it would take like an 0-6 season for Harbaugh to get for the hot seat to be a thing. Like, I don't think there's any way they move on from John Harbaugh. That's, to me, he's in that rarefied air with what's his name in Pittsburgh. Like they've just done it so well for so long that it's going to take an extraordinary amount of losing for them to be out.
Well, yeah, and that's to say, right, like, if the Ravens turn in a season comparable to what Mike Tomlin's been doing for the past, like, half a decade to a decade in terms of, like, making the playoffs barely or, having a winning record every season, like, I don't think that would warrant it. But, like, if the Ravens go, like, 4-13 and then start out next season similar to this season, I think there's a conversation to be had. I don't think there's an organization in the NFL that's like, oh yeah, you can tank the team for 2 years. That's perfect. Like, look at let's look at another Super Bowl winning coach. Let's look at Sean McVay. Won the Super Bowl and then had a very down season. The Rams sucked for the one season. No one was talking about him on the hot seat. He was talking about retiring because it sucked so bad. But then he takes their draft picks once they get him back and he rebuilds the team, and now they're a contender again. Like, that's the kind of equity I expect John Harbaugh to have, but that's for a season. He needs to show up really quick the following season. And a 2-2 start even is fine. Like, he just needs to put up a win earlier than I guess they started the season with a win, but like, he needs to show something earlier. That's just that's how I see it. I don't know. Let's shift gears a little bit. We'll talk about this and then we'll probably bring it to a close. But Brady, I saw your comment over on Instagram. Thanks for the compliment on my hair. That's really cool.
Salon quality hair right there.
Salon quality. Redken only. For if you know, you know. Let's see. Not sponsored, but would love to be sponsored if you're listening. Uh, is is Joe Mixon still alive? Brady Sticker asks, and this pretty much. So this is playing out exactly like I said it would, and I think that I am owed an apology because I 100% believed it. I didn't feel like Chicken Little then. I don't feel like Chicken Little now. Every report is basically falling directly in line with what happened to Christian Harris. The timeline maintains, it holds. What just last week, Diana Rossini said, "Oh yeah, they'll reevaluate mid-October," and then another report comes out that says, yeah, we're not even like it's a good thing Woody Marks is there because we're not even sure if we'll see Joe Mixon again this season." So they're slow playing it. They're like, you know, a Gen Z couple trying to slowly tell everyone on social media that they're together. They're like just slowly revealing the pieces that would tell us, yeah, Joe Mixon's not playing this season. Instead of just outright saying like, hey, it's not looking good. We hope he can get back, but it's not looking good. So I don't know. How do you feel about Tom? Is Joe Mixon still alive? Did you have a different take on this?
Physically, he's alive. For everyone that is wondering if he'll play football again, I mean, we're all in a wait and see. No one knows. There are people that say they know, but no one knows what's really going on with Joe Mixon. There are plenty of, Twitter warriors. They're like, well, I heard through a back channel that it's this. And until Schefter or Rapp or one of those talking heads report it, the Texans aren't going to tell you. As much as we talked about Lamar and how the Ravens aren't giving you a straight answer, the Texans are doing that too with Joe Mixon. They did the same thing with Christian Harris. They are not required to provide you anything, and they're not going to do it.
To be fair, one of the names that has spoken the phrase, "We don't know if we're going to see Joe Mixon again this season," is Aaron Wilson. That was a tweet that he made with a per source, like wasn't like an opinion or a quotation around someone else. It was like per reliable source. He may be back. We don't know.
Was that recently?
It was within the last week or so, around the time that Rossini put out her report. That's what I'm going on. But there are other names that have said it, but like the most reliable person that I know that has alluded to the fact that Joe Mixon might not be back this season is Aaron Wilson. And
that's a great name. If Aaron Wilson says it,
if he's alluding to it.
Now, there were people that said it before him, and those are the people that I'm directly directing it at that are saying, oh, we knew a long time ago that Joe Mixon was cooked. And I'm like, how? In what world? I don't know. I try really hard not to be the guy that just talks for the sake of talking. I only want to give you the facts. You know what I mean? What I try to lean from is straight black and white. And right now we don't know anything. We don't know what I know he had an injury. He was supposedly rehabbing from that injury, and it's taking longer for him to get back. That's the latest and greatest that we got. And Stressens, who, if anybody doesn't know Stressens, I don't know what rock you're living under, had videos of him getting ready before the season started, like he was, maybe a couple weeks out. And now we stop seeing those videos from anyone, not just Stressens, but anyone. And no one sees Joe anywhere. Like, I kind of expected him, if he was going to be close, kind of like Tank. Tank Dell looks like he's a dude that is trying like hell to play sometime this season. And we all thought he was not going to play this season.
And that would be so much fun. Imagine suiting up wild card weekend and just seeing Tank Dell at 3:00 on a Saturday.
Part of me wants it, part of me doesn't, because I feel we're like 2 weeks away from the Jalen Noel blow up game.
Yeah,
and that they're a direct competition, I think, for the same job.
Oh yeah, you'd have to agree. I like the idea. So I think Jalen Noel solves a problem that a lot of people had with Tank Dell being on the field, was that he was doing a lot. They were like, why is he returning kicks? He's a really good wide receiver. Why is he blocking? You put Jalen Noel in when you're on the goal line. You put Jalen Noel in to return kicks, and you let Tank Dell do the rest. And I mean, it's a steep price to pay. I think a 3rd round pick for Jalen Noel to just do that doesn't make any sense. But I'd like to see over time him maybe Christian Kirk leaves, I think he usurps some of that role, gets a little run. But for me personally, I only want to see Tank Dell back for the postseason if he's back in time to play the last week or two of the regular season. As he's shown when returning from injury, he needs a little time to get some run and get ready. And so I'd like to see him see some game time action. I don't want them to rush him back to see that action, and I don't want them to not play him if he's ready for the playoffs. Like that, to me, doesn't make any sense. But if Tank Dell's 100% ready to go prior to the playoffs, I think at least 1 week in the regular season, I'd like to see him take the field.
What scares me about Tank Dell, and I don't know what he looks like now. They had a picture that was floating around on Twitter or social somewhere where it's like both of his legs, like after the surgery or whatever, and one is like twice the size of the other. And for me, I need him to build all the muscle back up in that leg and make that thing strong before he's out there. You know what I mean? Like and I just don't know how long that would take. Like I imagine structurally everything would be fine, but like to go from like no muscle mass in your leg to some, how long does that take?
Yeah, and if by the end of the season, if Christian Kirk and Jalen Noel find their rhythm and that role is filled, I don't think there's any rush. I wouldn't mind, Tank Dell sitting for the rest of the season and taking a full off season to get back into things. I mean, for sure his spot's still there. I don't think that there's any reason to believe that a guy like Justin Watson or, Braxton Berrios makes the roster over Tank Dell when healthy. But yeah, I mean, I think that caution there is not unwarranted, but if he's ready to go, random sense in sitting him if he can benefit the team. But yeah, sweet. Do you have anything else to say before we bring this thing to a close? I feel like we've covered a lot.
I mean, nothing really. Obviously, we're looking forward to this game. At least I am. I've always been looking forward to this game. I really kind of wish Baltimore was healthy. I know people are like, what do you mean, Tom? But, like the Texans are going to have to beat good teams in their building at some point if they want to be considered the elite. And while a Baltimore win will be historic in the sense that they've never done it before, it's going to be a little hollow if they get it done because they're going to be missing a significant chunk of their team. And to say, oh, well, we beat them in their house. I mean, like, nah, you really didn't. You beat like some guys wearing their jerseys. You beat the replacements. Like, I need to see them go head up with Lamar and all those guys and come out on the other side. I mean, I need to see that with Kansas City too.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, I'm going to hit you with a taste of your own medicine here. Not because I believe it, but because I think it needs to be said. A win is a win, Tom.
I'm absolutely.
If the Texans get a win here, it doesn't matter if the Ravens are injured.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. No, I agree with you. 100%.
No, yeah.
I will be saying that Sunday night if we get the dub. That is not going to change for me, not one bit. To me, I think there is something to be said for injury. And that goes for all sports. Yeah. And so while I will be like, thank you, Baltimore, at the same time, I'm not going to go, well, we beat Baltimore.
I think I like that they're injured, or that they're coming in the way they are. One, it's a stair step. The Texans had some really good momentum against the Titans. They're not being expected to go against a juggernaut this week. So I think it massively benefits them. And also it'll very immediately answer some questions. We're in week 5. If the offense struggles against a defense that literally can't stop anyone from scoring, there's, that'll contextualize the Titans game. I'll look back and I'll be like, okay, the Titans game was a blip. There's still some work to be done. This offense has made improvements, but I guess not as much as that performance would indicate. Whereas if the Texans can go into Baltimore, even against an injury-riddled Baltimore team, and continue to build on what they did against the Titans, then we can start having those conversations about, okay, progress is being made. We're taking steps forward, going into the bye week with some good stuff. So those are my final thoughts. That's what I'd like to see. We have our preview of the Baltimore game coming out later this week. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube to the Bullpen so that you can be a part of that. If you are looking for a Texans podcast, this is the #1 veteran-run Texans podcast in the universe. I took a brief look beyond our solar system. I didn't find any veterans that talk about the Texans, so I'm comfortable saying that. But thanks for hanging with us. We'd love to have y'all here. I appreciate the questions in the chat. We love a lively chat so that you guys can get involved in the discussion. Hopefully I can get my second monitor up so I can actually more actively monitor the Instagram chat. Sorry. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. I have been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Tom is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.